Hot mic. Hello, everybody. Hi. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to International House. My name is Sean Carver, Executive Director here at International House. It's wonderful to see all of you here today for what we hope will be a thought-provoking conversation in the Lodestar Executive Director Speaker Series. Today's event, After the Vote, Insight from Women's Leaders, brings together three inspiring leaders who are each leaving a mark on public service and advocacy. We scheduled this event some time ago, and we really didn't know what the issues or headlines were going to be when we actually did the event. To be honest, at the time, I wasn't sure we were going to have a result to talk about, and I was prepared for talking in the mindset of the previous election, that this was going to be dragging on, this was going to be arguing about the process. I do want to recognize all the election officials and volunteers across the country that in the face of violence and threats went out and did their job and brought integrity back into our election process. The world does watch how we transition our power. And if there's one thing I could be very proud of, it's the last 2 days of how we've transitioned in a very difficult and divided country. So we wanted to create a space where we could come together after the election, whatever the outcome, to reflect, learn, and engage in meaningful dialogue. This afternoon is about understanding where we go from here, guided by the insights of three people who have dedicated themselves to the public good. Today's conversation also speaks to the values we uphold here at iHouse: fostering cross-cultural understanding, respect, and a commitment to civil engagement. We hope that this afternoon will spark questions, inspire new perspectives, and encourage all of us to think deeply about our roles in shaping our communities. I'd like to start by welcoming our three panelists. I will start by introducing Kate Harrison, iHouse alumni. iHouse alumni. Kate has served for 7 years in the Berkeley City Council following her tenure as a city commissioner and board member, a longtime Berkeley resident, activist, homeowner, small business owner, and community volunteer. Kate has been a transformative force in the city, leading initiatives to expand affordable housing, enhancing public safety, and drive climate action. Kate?
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker, our next panelist, it says here candidate. I'm going to go on a limb and go ahead and call it the newly elected congressperson from California's 12th District in the U.S. House of Representatives, Lateefah Simon. Lateefah is a veteran organizer and nationally recognized advocate for civil rights and social justice, a recipient of the MacArthur Genius Fellowship for her work advocating for marginalized young women. She has had impactful roles, including working alongside Kamala Harris during her tenure as district attorney. In 2020, she was appointed by California Governor Gavin Newsom as a senior advisor on police reform. So please welcome me again for Lateefah Simon. And last but not least, Maria Echaveste. Sorry. Maria is a former presidential advisor to Bill Clinton and served as White House Deputy Chief of Staff, a Berkeley Law graduate. She currently leads the Opportunity Institute, a nonprofit dedicated to advancing social and economic mobility and promoting racial equality. She is a senior fellow at the Center of American Progress and co-founder of the Nueva Vista Group, a policy and advocacy firm that partners with nonprofits and corporate clients on legislative strategy and policy initiatives. So welcome, Maria. And I will step aside and hand it over to Kate.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. I'm really glad to see all of you here today. As Sean mentioned, I am an alumna of International House. I lived here in 1977 through 79. And just last year, unfortunately, on October 6th, a dear friend of mine was being married in the East Coast who's Jewish, and his best friend, who's a Muslim from Pakistan, also an iHouse alumni, was his best man at the wedding. And we went through that event together, but also the joy of their coming together as a couple, Paul and his lovely wife, Anne. And that taught me something about two things. One, the value of long-term friendships. These are people I have known for 45 years. And it also taught me something about the value of cross-community conversation, which is what happens at iHouse every day. So I cannot tell you, and some of you don't know this yet, and you'll know when you leave, that living at iHouse completely changed my life. So I want to thank iHouse for inviting me to be here today. I'm really delighted to be with these stellar people that we have today to talk to you about what this latest election means, especially on the national level, and what are the implications moving forward. I want to start with a couple of just basic questions for each of you. So I'll start with Lateefah and then Maria. What do these election results from just 2 days ago say about current voter priorities in the United States?
Well, what a question.
I know, I'm going to start with the easy one.
So what I also learned in politics, like someone asks you a question and then like you can kind of like make up another question for yourself. Not necessarily a question. I just wanted to, like a 10-second story. I remember when I was the executive director at the Young Women's Freedom Center, and we were sitting around thinking about like who our dream board members would be. And I remember a young woman named Marlene Sanchez, who, you know, Marlene had been arrested 13 times before she was 18. She's now the executive director of Ella Baker Center. She said, Maria Echaveste. Because as a Latina and someone who's been working on working class issues, who's been a lawyer, who's been in politics on TV since, you know, you're only a few years older than some of us in the room, but just watching you has just been such an honor. And so thank you. And thank you, Kate. You guys, I'm devastated. I need to lay down. I have not processed what is happening. But I will say this. California's 12th Congressional District is the most progressive district in these United States, and we are moving to the right. We are moving to the right. That all the data that we know around, you look at just the polling from this district, we have work to do, but we've been through hard times. But here's what is true. You look at that red map, and I still know and still believe that folks in this country deserve a movement that will demand good health care for everyone, that a care economy be boosted so that our caretakers are compensated for what is now free labor. I mean, I can go on and on and on, from West Virginia to Detroit, Michigan, to right here in Oakland and in Berkeley. Folks are just dying to survive. The politic of the country has changed, not just the politic in terms of partisan politic, but the tone of our politics. It's gotten raggedy. So we're gonna have, literally, the comportment of that man is so shameful. And we said yes, as a country, to that. So we have to just put our shoulders back and hold our heads up and roll up our sleeves and get to it. Because every single fundamental right that we have fought for is in danger or gone. Social Security, Medicaid, the threat of mass incarceration on steroids, mass deportations, week 1. This is a fire alarm right here. It's not a drill. There's a fire. But, you know, we are people of consciousness, and many of us, even if you aren't religious, you're people of faith because you believe in something that we've never seen before. Justice. Like, we haven't seen it truly, we experienced it. So, okay, that is a good question. I'm just a good question. I think that these conversations provide us the opportunity to get to it and figure out what we do next.
And thank you so much, Congresswoman-elect, for your kind words. I want to say quickly 3 points. One is, for the first time in 2 decades, the Republican candidate won the popular vote. This is really critical. Number 2, what do these results show? First and foremost, let's not retreat into the easy labels of it's racism, it's sexism, it's misogyny. There's some. But I spent 2 weeks in Michigan. And one of the things that really, really hit me was the sense of not hopelessness, and not despair, but just a sense that there wasn't a brighter future, because you saw shopping centers closed and storefronts closed and factories closed and just a real lack. Hey, there is something to the bias of those of us who have the privilege to go buy a $5 latte. And we forget that to our peril. So I think, and it's connected to the 50-year effort and beyond of destroying unions, of increasing the wealth at the very top, the 1%. Pay attention to the fact that Elon Musk is going to have a role. And what does that mean for not just our country, the world? There are just so many, but it is that people voted for change because they don't see anybody helping them have that kind of future. And I will close by saying, and I also know, because I've campaigned so much, I've had the good fortune of traveling across this country, when you engage with people, you discover, regardless of their background, regardless of their geography, they want the same thing you do. Safe neighborhoods, housing, good schools, access to health care, a dignified retirement. And so that leaves me constantly asking, if we all want the same thing across race, gender, class, how come our politics have led us to this point where a person who will not deliver any of those things has been elected?
I would say it's the power of money in politics. And I know that sounds trite. I don't think you have to go to Michigan. You can go to San Pablo Avenue in Berkeley and see this poverty and see the despair that people have. You can see closed shopping malls at Eastmont in Oakland. You can see that people have lost a lot of the sense of what used to bring them together as a community. And we don't talk about this enough, but COVID had a major impact on people's psychology. It totally changed the way we interact with each other. It changed the fact that we don't shop the same, that we don't do anything, that we don't work the same, we don't see each other the same. And so I feel we never, as a country, and this is not a comment just about one party or the other, we refuse to step back and talk about the emotional pain of that experience, of the people lost. And I feel like that's a big feature in what we've left behind.
Whoops.
Oh, you on?
Okay. I don't, absolutely, I'm very familiar with, I live in Berkeley, very familiar with all our stresses, right? And that answers in part the point of, hey, in this district, we're moving more to the right because there's a sense of hopelessness and what's the future hold. But I think, yes, COVID had an impact, but I think we can't ignore that over centuries, and certainly over the last 100 years, there have been groups in this country who never had a chance to actually get that rung, that first, second rung on the economic ladder for all the reasons we understand, which includes racism. So, yes, COVID had, but all the structural things have just been laid bare.
Yes, I believe that's true. COVID laid bare what was already existing. So that leads me to the next question. So this does suggest that large swaths of America feel unrepresented by the Democratic Party. What can we do about that? What are things that we should be doing differently, if those of us that are Democrats and represent people and run as Democrats, what should we be doing differently as we speak to people? Lateefah.
Follow Black women. You see?
Yes.
Black people in this country. I woke up this morning and I looked at the data. The moral center of the political electorate, I believe. Black people in this country for decades have been under-resourced by, I'm talking partisan right now, by the Democrats. We have in every single election voted our values, worked so hard to get the right to vote so that we could consistently articulate who we are. We have work to do, cross-race, cross-class. I am so clear that I have so much work to do, but when you read the biography of Shirley Chisholm, of Barbara Lee, I want to be a Karen Bass Democrat, you know what I'm saying? Who like gets it done, who comes in and like plugs her own computer. I think that this moment is very telling. It's very telling. But if young people, if queer folks, if disabled folks, if our families who are seeking asylum, who've been waiting for 10 years to get a hearing with no access to legal representation, can still believe that some folk will work for them, God bless us. God bless, we have consistently, to your point, Counselor, we have let folks down. The first campaign that I ran and won with about 500 young sisters and gender nonconforming youth right beside me and with me, and I was behind them, was in San Francisco's juvenile hall where they were shackling pregnant. Dan knows this. Dan McAleer, who's in the room, remembers me when I was doing this work as a teenager. The probation department used to shackle incarcerated girls during their births. In our lifetime. I mean, I'm old, I'm not that old. And the probation chief was Black, right? So government, with all its intentions, is still run by people. Institutions are people. And unless we figure out how on a very local level, regional, state, and of course national, we experience our government here, where we're proximate, where our home is, where we go to school, where we eat, where we pray, and the living conditions, to your point, whether it's Detroit or on High Street, are such that in a $1 billion times 12 city in San Francisco, you got 8,000 people who still live on the streets. Listen, I love politics and politicians. We haven't figured out how to get it right.
Maria, can you address this more specifically from the point of view of what is the Democratic Party itself missing?
Well, I hate to say I'm going to be a squeakier wheel after this, but I've been trying to raise the alarm that the Democratic Party and how it runs campaigns is controlled by political operatives that they want to do it, and some of my best friends are, so but they want to do it sort of the easy way through media. They want to start the campaigns, after Labor Day. So many things went wrong, and I will speak, I've been focused on the Latino vote since 1992. And full disclosure, I sit on the board of Mi Familia Vota, which on the C4 board, and we were starved for resources. All the money that was coming in was going to Future Forward or to the campaign. And guess what? At least for the API community and certainly for the Latino community, you got a chunk of people who just need basic information on how to vote. They need to be educated. This is work that community-based C3 organizations, you could all get charitable deductions if you support. They actually need that education. Then you need C4 organizations that can give you that, the edgier, the difference between this candidate and this position, right? And then you've tilled the soil, right? You've prepped people. Then the campaigns can come in and make their case. But no, that's not what we do. And so over and over again, especially in this cycle, at one of the meetings I was at in Saginaw, talking to Latinos, like, we're going to get blamed, as is happening, for losing this election. Actually, there's a great Onion piece of, it's like, which minority group are we going to blame, right? But the reality is, the party and the candidates, but really the party has to understand that for certain communities, speaking only about Latinos, we are so diverse. I was mortified that the big announcement from the Harris campaign during Hispanic Heritage Month was, we're making a $3 million buy in Spanish. Excuse me, the majority of Latino voters speak English. Now, what we want is for the candidate to recognize that my story, my origin story, that you see me. But you're going to talk to me about the economy, and for sure, I just don't want to hear about immigration. I want to hear about healthcare. I want to hear about education. How come as a Latina, I somehow am only care about one thing?
I want to say thank you so much for that. A lot of this has to do with the sort of political class of consultants that advise everyone who's running. I have seen this happen to candidate after candidate. Really good people. They want to run a race the way you're talking about. They want to talk about the issues. But some consultant gets in there and they're told you have to raise all this money. And despite our efforts to do public financing, it really is not effective because you don't have to follow public financing, and the people with more money inevitably seem to win. So until we solve that problem, we're going to have this system. In terms of I want to just say something about this issue with Latino and Latina voters. The voter list that I get as a candidate purport to show who speaks Spanish, and they are completely wrong because they are not developed by people in the community. They're developed by firms that do voter lists. So they drive campaigns through these anonymous sources, and I think it's a real shame, even for candidates that are very strong and want to do the right thing. So this leads me to a kind of different area altogether, and that is, what role do you think disinformation or efforts to suppress voter turnout had in this last election? And I'll start with you, Maria.
First, we have to recognize my late husband, Christopher Edley, was on the Ford Carter Commission that looked at voting after the 2000 election. And one of the things that he shared with me was the fact, and we need to understand, our elections are run at the county level. We don't have centralized election systems. So there is real, how you help people access the ballot, what the deadlines are, we make it really hard. So when it's that, decentralized, and remember, women didn't get the right to vote until the 1900s. We needed the Voting Rights Act in 1965, and the efforts over the last 5 to 10 years to restrict and suppress voting in certain parts of this country are a reflection that we call ourselves a democracy, but we have put obstacles and barriers. I have an idea for you. The right, Republicans say we need voter IDs, right? The left says no to that because there will be some percentage of people who have a hard time finding their birth certificate or being able to prove, but it's a small percentage because most of us have a driver's license, right? What if we said to the other side, okay, let's have a voter ID, a state-based voter ID, and in return, let's do 2 weeks of early voting. Let's make Election Day a national holiday like other countries do. It seems to me we could then take resources to help all that percentage, maybe it's 5, 8% of Americans, and make sure they get their right. But see, we could, but I believe the other side would never buy it. I want to call their bluff.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, what do you think on that, Lateefah? It's a voter disinformation.
You know, the access to voting, I just thank you so much for lifting that up. It's confusing if you have a lot of knowledge. And if you're working 3 or 4 shifts, if you're in nursing school, I mean, I've met folks who didn't know if the election was on the 4th or the 6th, and they're brilliant people. Actually, I thought I was going to say something different about this answer, but this moment in innovation is extremely scary. There were some districts in the United States where campaigns would use AI technology and do robocalls and tell folks in particular communities that they could turn their vote in the next day. Imagine you pick up the phone, grandma picks up the phone, and there's a voice that says, "This is not hyperbole, this happened. Hi, this is Pastor Dan. I'm just leaving you a message, Miss Jones, that you can actually just drop your ballot off in the morning on the 6th. Don't worry, it's fine, or the 7th. So misinformation, imagine if you were running for class president here and your opponent said, "Sheila doesn't even go to Cal." And you're like, "I'm in class right now." There are no rules in elections. So when you talk about misinformation, you're also talking about lies and the vitriol. I'm still hopeful, but as you all move to significant spaces of leadership in this country and beyond, I'm hoping you'll make it better for us. Because in this thinly veiled democracy, folks who are working the hardest never get a seat at the table because it's almost impossible to get through the lies, to be able to raise the resources needed to run a significant campaign anywhere, whether it's school board or United States Senate. Somebody in your family got to have some money because you got to work and you got to campaign, and what if you have childcare? I'm glad that after, I was on the ground for a long time in my career, and I never thought I wanted to be in politics. And now I'm in it, and I'm shocked. It is a knife fight in a phone booth, right? Like a knife in a phone booth, right? They don't even have phone booths anymore. I'm dating myself. Right? There are no phone booths. Misinformation it's shocking. And campaigns and consultants, it's what drives the sector. The political sector is also a big business, right? So you make bad ads. No one's fact checking them. There's no journalism in campaign rhetoric. All institutions can be made better, though. We can shift that. But it has personally been very, very difficult running my campaign and having just lies said about me every single day that were just shocking. The best advice that I got, imagine you're trying to fight somebody and you're literally swinging every day, and they just walk right past you. It pisses you off even more. So that's what I've done for most of my campaign. I just kept running my race. But again, there are no consequences to this culture, this political culture, led by the man who is actually going to step into the White House on the 20th. That there's less civility, but the culture of lies in politics, we got to shift that and hold those folks accountable.
The only thing I would say about this question is that it is very, very different at a local level, and I'm grateful for that. I've never tried to run for Congress or anything else. When you're running locally, there is more of a chance for people to actually hear your voice. But still, the role of money and consultants and the way the media has really pulled back from reporting on real issues. I felt the entire time I was running that I was in a shadow box. Like I would raise an issue and there'd be no response. It's almost like, well, that's not the issue I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about this instead. So the constant shifting of sands when you're running is very sort of destabilizing in a sense. We had perhaps one very good debate run by a public policy professor at Berkeley who didn't let people do that. He kept coming back and insisting. We had another debate where a group actually asked us, how do you get rid of ideology on the city council? And my answer to that is you don't. There's nothing wrong with people not agreeing with each other. We have to do that thoughtfully and politely, but I want differences of opinion. And what I feel is missing is any kind of real debate of issues. And I don't know if you felt that in your race. I didn't hear a lot about your race, frankly. And I think because you were considered a front runner, there was a kind of like, oh, don't worry, Lateefah will win. We did not pay enough attention to your race because of that perception. I don't know if you felt that while you were running.
You know, listen, I had to be reminded by my wonderful team. There are 3 of them here. 2 of them are current bears. To just run my race and to get off Twitter, which was really hard. I had to take it off my phone. Oh my gosh. But my crew, who become like family, they kept reminding me elections are not won on Twitter, right? They may be in the future. So there were a lot of races. Listen, in Oakland, that is it's a town. We call it the town for a reason. It's not a huge, big city. It's a lot of nastiness in this election where it was shocking. So folks have been very, very much focused on, again, politics are local. And listen, Barbara Lee, God bless her, who was also, as you all know, a bear, was in the Masters of Social Work program here, and that really set the stage for the rest of her political life. She's been a champion for us. I think folks knew this was a dim-on-dim race, and we were going to be okay, and that folks oftentimes don't hear from our federal legislature until there's a crisis. Well, that's changing because we actually have somebody very evil we're in a crisis. So it's okay. I mean, I get it. But it's no race. If you're not running scared, you're not running, because it is up to real people, not even how much money you have, right? It's up to real people to vote for you. They're your boss. And so I've been very humbled by this process, how hard it was. Yes, I had a lot of endorsements. I was on the phone a lot raising resources. I mean, uncomfortably a lot. But I'll tell you this, Kate, regardless what happens even in my race, because the voters do decide, we just keep working.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Can I say?
Yes.
I think it's really important I just respect anyone who puts themselves out and runs as a candidate. And I admit freely that I never had the guts. And I was asked various times, why don't you run for? It takes a certain kind of person, and I respect anyone who puts themselves out. Win or lose, that takes courage, and so my hat's off.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, now in a complete shift of topics, we want to ask you a bit about the impact of this recent presidential election on the global scene. And I'm going to start with Maria again. How do you think this election will shape U.S. foreign policy?
I think we need...
I get the small questions.
Yeah, right, exactly. We need to take him at his word. And let's remember, this is not new. We had him as president 4 years ago. So he's transactional. He's about making a deal. It is short-sighted. There is no vision of American policy. He doesn't respect the role we're likely to pull out of NATO. Who knows what happens in Ukraine? Let me not talk about Israel and Gaza, but it's not good. Foreign policy, the tariffs that he's talking about, tariff on products made in Mexico, 60% of our goods come from Mexico. That is going to impact people's pocketbooks because it's going to get passed on. So it's not going to be pretty. And remember, it's been very clear, he is going to appoint people who are yes people, who share his vision of an executive that has full power to do what the executive wants. And we had a revolution because we did not want a king. He's going to act like a king. And everyone else around him will let him and I'm worried about our Supreme Court. So what are the guardrails? So on foreign policy, it's terrifying. I'm just really, really terrified.
Trying to figure out how to say something that's not that. I was going to say it's devastating. Devastating. Do you have any thought that someone with this just level of bile spiritually is going to be a man of peace? No. And we better get the House. I mean, I'm waiting. I mean, we're waiting. It's not looking good either, right? This trifecta might be a real thing. We have, over 15 international conflict zones where we are implicit right now on the globe. The United States is implicit in people and children dying daily. And I am not hopeful that that'll change. And we want to be hopeful, right? We want to be hopeful. I believe we'll have to create an enduring movement that is strategic, that is multiracial, that is clear, that sings the same song like the MAGA movement, literally, where we can be unified in the country that we want and the one that we deserve. But I'm terrified.
Thank you. In terms of as you get into Congress now, the first 100 days, what do you think the administration is going to try to do first, and what are you going to be doing first in these first days? What do you think the first things we can be doing are?
I love this question because it's one thing, before Election Day, and then it's another for me thinking about what does that really look like? Move past the rhetoric and what we want to do. We have to figure out how to save this republic. It is in danger. So that's sort of the macro goal. Y'all are sending me to Congress not just to be on MSNBC every day. Folks have said, Lateefah, go in, learn quickly, make all the relationships, get on bills that have been dangling or have bills that have been orphaned or in suspense. There's already work on the floor that needs to continue. We haven't passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. You could still buy weapons of war legally in this country. No one's talking about the Second Amendment and doing away with it. Let's strengthen it, but let's be clear and let's be thoughtful. There's work to do. And the majority of this country and the majority of the states, women have no bodily autonomy. Children have no bodily autonomy. Women over their reproductive rights. There's work to do. So, I have been in conversations daily with Democratic leadership. And I told Leader Jeffries, tap me in. I'm coming from California. I'm coming from the East Bay. I am not coming to play around. I want to be a leader in our freshman class and a voice who acts and who delivers with a party. I'm not running to be a principal, the president, or the mayor. There's a body that needs to move together to advance to some of the most basic fundamental rights like care. So there's work to do. There's no, I'm gonna come in and just start authoring bills. If you don't understand the institution, that's would be your response. No, we actually have some shoveling to do. And I wanna be one of those gardeners.
Do you have a first thing you want to shovel out?
Donald J. Trump.
Since you won't be able to do that, exactly.
No, I mean, literally, so, I have been pretty vocal about my committee choices, and they get decided by the leadership of your party. Transportation and infrastructure is extremely important to me. We have homes to build for low-income people and our seniors here. We have a public transportation ecosystem that really needs an infusion of resources. There's work to do there. We have sea level rise in this district that in the next decade, listen, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. And I'm going to Congress to bring back some resources, even in a Trump administration. Look, I helped to bring back $3 billion during the Trump administration as a member of Bay Area Rapid Transit Board. Almost 70% of our operating budget was fare box. So on March 14th of 2000, literally BART lost more than half of its operating budget when folks were called to stay home. And we worked with the Trump administration and the Department of Transportation, and we got resources as part of the packages that came, the COVID packages. We'll do that again. We'll do that again. People know that it takes about 7 years for a good bill to pass. It takes about 3 Congresses if you have all the ducks in the row, which we don't. So what we do is we get resources. What we do is we organize. What I do is make sure that the coalitions that I am working with and love and who are shaping me and holding me accountable, that they have access to my office, to the United States Congress, to that floor. We're going to organize our way back.
Thank you. Maria, what do you perceive is going to happen in these first 100 days? And
Well, I think we have the playbook, whether it's Project 2025 or the other group that's less public about its plans. I think I'm trusting and have some confidence that folks at the national level, advocacy groups who care about healthcare, who care about reproductive rights, who care about pick the issues. What I would be counseling them is, they're going to come for this, this, and this. Okay, what's our strategy? How do we respond both at an organizing level, but also legislatively and as a media? How do we look? They've put their sights on healthcare, Obamacare. It's actually popular, right? So we need to make sure that when Mike Johnson and Trump decide that they want to get rid of it, that they hear it loud and clear that no, people are not going back to not having health care. When RFK decides to, whatever he's going to do, we're going to have to be organized and be clear in our messaging, right? And on there is plenty of work for everyone. Plenty of work. Pick your issue, figure out who to work with, and that's at the national, state, and local level. And let's be ready to respond, because it's going to come. They told us what they wanted to do.
Yeah. It's not a surprise. Okay, and our last question is, what advice would you give to aspiring female leaders? And I'll start with you, Maria.
What advice? It's very much along with Lateefah said is, let me start with this. One of the things I noticed in my White House days, and you see this in corporate boardrooms as well, in corporations, was we always had a morning meeting to discuss what the day was going to be and sort of what we needed to respond to. And it was actually, the Clinton administration was really among the first pretty close, of having a lot of women in senior roles, or more than just one. But so you'd have a table of maybe 14, 15. The guys, and I mean it with all respect, the guys always jumped in, and you could see it, and I caught myself as well. Oh, he said it, I don't have to say it. The guys, it's not said until he says it. We, kind of hold back, and if I just want to add value. So what I would say is, do not be shy. If you've got a good idea and you have something to say, we need to lean into it, as Sheryl Sandberg says. We need to lean into it. My husband would always say I didn't have sharp enough elbows. There was some truth to that. I pretty much operated on good work will be recognized, and I feel that that's what happened. But the reality is you do need to put yourself out there. And remember, it's not going to be 100%, and people will dislike you. There are egos. We all have egos. Organizations have egos. Try organizing a coalition of nonprofits. So it really is the advice is, we need your voice. You need to put yourself out there, have something to say, and keep your feet on the ground. That's the other thing. It is so easy. It is so easy to listen to people who are singing your praises. Singing your praises. You start to believe it. I knew, so when I got asked to be in the White House as Director of Public Liaison, it was the inauguration, and I was at a party. And the Washington thing is, shake your hand while looking to see who else they should go see, right? And literally, the woman I was with introduced me to someone, and then she said, and she's going to be director in the White House. Suddenly, they're paying all kinds of attention to you, right? You leave the White House, they won't return your phone number. So you have got to keep your feet on the ground and remember who you are and not let it go to your head. That is really hard to do in an environment that is constantly, telling you how great you are. No, keep your feet on the ground.
I just want to take a whole semester of you. It's like the wisdom and the grace. And it's so beautiful to see it. We read about these amazing leaders, and then we're so lucky this institution both had you and the great Dean Edley for so long, and so many of us were able to see. I love this woman, and so I'm always going to tell you how much I think it's exactly what you said more than anything else. Everybody in here is super smart and amazing, and you beat out probably 100,000 people just to get into Cal. You're already amazing. This idea of having good people around you who love you, whatever leadership position it is. If you're a manager at Dog on a Stick, have good people around you. I have really good best friends. I have 7. And it's very uncomfortable because they all introduce themselves. These are girls that I knew from the 6th grade. I'm Lateefah's best friend. And then the other one will be right here shh, be quiet. I love a community of women who will tell me that whatever I just did the night before wasn't that good, to your point. Or I need to sharpen up here, but who also pick up my kid from school when I can't. Wherever you are in life, having a small circle of besties is critical to our mental and spiritual and intellectual health, of folks who could care less what your job is. I can care less what I'm doing outside of, why didn't you respond back to the group text? Those are the friends that I want. Sisterhood is a very, very, the most powerful medium in my life. Mm-hmm. It's so important. My sisters are there for me as I am for them. So I love your advice, and because it definitely mirrors what I think as well.
Well, thank you for that. I would agree with the sisterhood comment. Having just run a race, the people that are always there before you run, while you run, late at night when you need to clean up your house after all the campaign people have left, and after you've run, whether you've won or lost, are your friends. And we just never can forget that. And I think I really love that you said that. A couple of other really important pieces of advice. Even when we don't know we're doing it, women apologize all the time. The way we talk is an apology, often. That doesn't mean we have to be disagreeable. It just means we have to stop apologizing for our thoughts. And I saw that really in action in this national election. Very particularly, the more the language got ugly towards women or tried to feminize the opponents who were men or women, the more women apologized. And what you said earlier about, who are we going to blame, in this election? Let's blame Latinos. Let's blame women who didn't know their own mind and voted for Trump. Let's blame black men. We have to stop apologizing. I think it's just so critical. One thing, and there's a movie, All That Jazz, and there's a thing before he goes onto stage, every time he says, it's showtime. And to know that when you're stepping out there, you have to remember who you are and what you've done, and not let other people take you off that that path, and they will try. They will try all the time to make you feel small, and you can't allow that to happen. That doesn't mean you're not humble, but you can't let them make you feel small. And then finally, to keep your sense of humor and balance, it is really easy in leadership to just say, well, I'll just work those extra 2 hours. I'll skip that exercise class. I won't have dinner with my husband. I will give up all of my friendships. I won't see my mother. Whatever it is, don't do it. The people that succeed at this are the people that keep that balance with the rest of their life. And we need you to do that. It's not like you're doing it just for yourself. If you don't do it for yourself, you won't be there for anyone else. So I think that's just such a critical piece of leadership. Those are all the questions I had for you. I'm sure the audience has questions. I'm not sure how we were handling this. Do we have someone with a mic? And I'm going to go ahead and stand up here so I can see people a little bit better, perhaps. And because the light is strange here, but I'm going to let you go around with the mic. Do we have questions in the audience for our leaders here today? There's a woman there in the 4th row and someone over here. All right. The light is hard to see the audience.
Hi. I thought it was really interesting how you mentioned the Latino vote and how there's been a lot of blaming towards Latina community for Trump's victory. Something that I thought was really interesting was how the AAPI community just kind of was disregarded a lot in this election.
Right. Yep.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Can you say that again, the last part?
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting how in all of the graphs of the electorate in this election, the AAPI community pretty much was just nowhere to be seen. I was wondering whether or not, how do Asian Americans make their voices more heard in politics?
Oh, there was, certainly on the campaign, I have friends, one of my former partners, Irene Bueno, helped start an API PAC, and I had pictures from my friends in Nevada, Asian Americans who were campaigning. There is a stronger voice than it was, say, 30 years ago. And I think the API community is like the Latino community, even more so, because there is not a unifying language or country of origin. I remember Professor Jerry Yang at UCLA once said, culturally I'm Korean American, politically I'm Asian American. And I think that's a really good way to think. And for Latinos, we can't figure out how to call ourselves Latinos, Hispanics, but I could give a whole class on the Latino vote, but I think certainly the API community is flexing its muscles. I will say that the Democratic Party didn't really pay attention until, I would say, a couple of cycles ago, because so many small business owners, it split 50-50, and that's part of the problem for the Democratic Party. I say, I may be a Democrat, but I want both parties to fight for my vote. I actually believe it can bring us together. If the gerrymandering, that's a problem. And, the Democratic Party treats the African American vote in a way, takes it for granted, and then I would say it has not delivered as much, and I say this as the mother of 2 Black children. We have a lot of work to do in our politics. The last thing I would say, and it really goes to why we need this a lot of Latino leaders will do this big thing about, we're the largest minority, right? And then 2045 is going to be when the country becomes majority minority. I say no to that phrasing, to that frame. No, what's going to happen is that no one racial or ethnic group is going to be able to be elected they're not going to be able to elect president or member of Congress. They will have to work in coalition, right? So we are going to have to work in coalition and make every citizen's voice and vote matter.
I will say, first of all, give it up for that. Like that was amazing. I will say that sitting here at Berkeley, knowing that Berkeley has one of the best schools of journalism in the country, I am so excited to see a new bench of leaders come into professional journalism who look different than the folks who came before, who have different experiences. That was a decision. Somebody in the editorial room made a decision to ask those questions, to make that graph. There were so many levels of approval, and who was there to say, you left out Asian folks and Native folks, and in the Bay Area is particularly disrespectful, given who built literally this region. Journalism is so important and it's so critical, and even in this shifting change of how we get information, that's a publication of record, erasing whole communities, even if the percentages were low, if they were high. Somebody made a decision. And when we talked about leadership, it wasn't just about political leadership. Wherever you are, we have to stand in the gap for either your grandmother, your brothers and sisters, ourselves. Like, no one's coming to save us. Like, that's not gonna happen. Like, no one but us, when I say us collectively, folks with race and gender conscious who wanna see a better day, like, no one's gonna fight for better health care for your colleague except for you. When you get that first promotion, your second promotion, somebody made a decision to erase whole communities. So I can't wait for this new generation to start holding this broken culture to account, particularly in our journalism.
Thank you very much for that. Other questions? I don't see we can't see out here, so I'm gonna call on you. It's hard to see.
Is this on? Oh, yeah. First, I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you've said so far. It's been really interesting and insightful. The question that I had was just, you said a lot about obviously being women in leadership and the way of getting your voice out there. My current struggle, I guess, is more just the continual motivation to keep the fight going when both on a national and a local level, it's so hard to put so much effort in and see not even just no results, but in some cases, like we've seen this week, backsliding. And my question is just like, what is your, I guess, like personal way that you keep going despite seeing that? And then like, what advice do you give going forward? Because even just looking at going into local public service, it can be so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say, take a breath. Give yourself that small break. But also, it's only in working in coalition and community that will make any difference. So I think sometimes we get frustrated when we think, well, we collectively tried to do this. We came together before an election to do something, and it didn't work out. We have to come together the day after the election to keep working on it. That's really the truth of it, and it's exhausting. I'm not going to lie to you. It is completely exhausting. I've been in public affairs since I graduated from Berkeley, so that's 44 years of doing this work, either as a civil servant or as a politician, and it is really tiring. But again, if you work with other people, it makes it worth it and possible. So I also just turn again to my local community and say, this didn't happen here in quite the way it happened elsewhere. What are the things about our community that has made it strong enough to resist some of that, and how do we build on that? So thank you. Don't give up.
Yeah, I think we all collectively need to begin a healing process and then be the durable consciousness that we know we are. I think that, and I get exhausted. Like, I'm exhausted right now. I'm so sad. I cried last night. Like, I cried literally when I lost my husband. I'm weeping right now. I'm weeping because of what's gonna happen to the people that we love if we don't figure it out. So yeah, I'm gonna take some long naps, and then we have to recharge, but also figure out what in movement makes you happy. Like, Fannie Lou Hamer was one of the best movement leaders in this nation's history, one of the most consequential consequential people in the American politic. And you know what her main vocation was? She was a singer. I listened to Sweet Honey in the Rock all the time. They were the SNCC singers, right? These sisters fought with a weapon of vocal cord. And they have that soundtrack, that movement soundtrack. Many of us still listen to "We Who Believe in Freedom." You know what I'm saying? So like, find what you want to do, what brings you joy, because we need, when we talk about coalition, it's not just folks with bullhorns and signs, right? It's our musicians, it's our writers. Read Baldwin, right? Like, read the people that inspire you. Read Sapphire. Read movement leaders. The Dr. King papers exist just 20 miles away from, well, maybe 40, I don't drive. How far is Stanford? But they're like, you can, on this campus, read, hear, and listen to stories of folks who made it, like, out of nothing, which you did, your parents. It's okay, we can be sad. Movements, there's a Nagua word for movement, olin. And in Nagua, which is a native language here, with folks here, and it just means it keeps going. It's like it's circular. This work is circular, right? We have many winds, and then folks retreat, and then there's a shift, and then people get to decision-making power, and we go back and we go forth. Don't worry, do something that makes you happy. For me, it's politics. I love fighting for our folks. I love it. I love it. So if it's singing, if it's reading, we are a consciousness, a collective consciousness. So yeah, I think folks we need some collective healing, and these conversations are part of that process.
No one is just one thing, right? And so, echoing what Lateefah said, you need to find the things that give you some joy, some escape. Sometimes you don't want to read about the dry facts, or go read a sci-fi, fantasy, a mystery. Take long hikes. My particular passion, and some people know, is a lot of crafting, a lot of knitting. So you find the things and understand that you have to pace yourself. And you can contribute you're young, there's a long, God willing, a long life ahead, and we get to reinvent ourselves. And what really was making us passionate when I was 20, it's different when I'm 35. It's different when I have young children. So giving yourself that freedom to reinvent yourself and your causes, but recognize that if you're not involved and engaged, other people will be making decisions that affect you. So I personally just don't feel the luxury of stepping back.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm going to take care of myself.
That's right.
All right, ma'am. Yes, here in this row. Yes, you. Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you. That was very illuminating. I'm a different generation than a lot of people in the room, but my son is your age. He's very cynical. You guys have been through a lot. The world is not the one any of us expected. I'm sorry. What I wanted to ask is, if there is this dreaded trifecta, what are the guardrails? I mean, what are the guardrails if I'm not going to say his name. If someone decides we're not giving aid to California from such and such wildfire or earthquake, like executive decisions, or what happens when they say, well, we're not going to fund BART this time around. No, California's not getting any public transit money this time. What are the guardrails for that? And then for little us who are like in Berkeley, California, what's our role in the guardrails? We're very far away, and whatever.
Thank you for that question. Lateefah, what do you think?
I would say on the
I need you to answer the question because I don't know what the guardrails are. I don't know.
Well, I just
We're
saw.
gonna find out, but
Yeah, I just saw a news story that Governor Newsom is raising funds for legal defense, and we're going to litigate. And we, when Javier Becerra was our Attorney General, yeah, we were active. I mean, we saw what Trump was doing, so that's one guardrail, and I still have faith in the judicial system. The decisions of the Supreme Court in terms, we're going to have some problems, okay? So judicial system, public opinion, don't underestimate. I mean, if one thing we know about this guy is he cares deeply about what people think about him. And having tons of people protesting particular actions, it'll make a difference. I really believe that. Yeah, it really depends on the issue. It's like environment. Look, if he does something like, California contributes tremendously to the federal budget. So if they start to say, well, you're not going to get X, Y, and Z, I'm like, let's look at the legality of we're not sending our money to the national, tax collector. I actually don't know if we can do that, but I would really like to explore it if we don't get the aid we need, right? So we're going to have to be creative.
we are going to have to be creative. And I do, I didn't mean to sound defeated. I am worried about the same things that you're worried about. Because this is, while, we did have President Trump 4 years ago, the insanity is just emboldened. And it's more than deeply concerning. We're going to have to, the Democrats are going to have to figure it out. We're going to have to figure it out. There's a war room happening right now, literally in DC. They're trying to figure out our legislative package. What are we going to do with these bills that are now orphaned? We're losing giants. I will say that Barbara Lee is the only woman who is leaving the Congress to have made sure, in terms of supporting and endorsing another woman to come in. God bless her. We're going to have to work so hard. We're going to have to work. But I think, as you've been a professor of history and law, you know this, my grandmother couldn't vote in this country. She couldn't vote. She was a nursemaid and a maid nursing other people's babies in Arkansas when she died because the family believed that they owned her or that they got my grandmother cremated and she was not home a lot because she was taking care of another person's family. My mother found out weeks after she died that her mother was gone. So I say that story to say this new experiment, the experiment of the United States of America, is a fragile one. And we've been in some very, very dark places. I will say that we are sophisticated. We have fight and wins behind us. We will lose a lot, and we will also win again. I know that. People in the midst are going to hurt. Families are going to be split. So when we literally split up, this man was separating children and mothers who had walked multiple countries to get here seeking asylum. We'll fight back. We'll fight back, and we'll lose people, but we will work in their honor. And that's, I think, what a lot of us are ready to do. We haven't felt this way in quite some time, but we got to work. And I just want to be also clear, Kate, it's not like the past 4 years things have been great. Yeah, right? Right? It's kind of been a struggle. There's 8,000 people that are sleeping on the streets of this district, on the ground, on the cement. So people who have struggled their whole lives, they know what struggle looks like. They know what war looks like. Women who have survived sexual assault, they are surviving and fighting every single day. We will make underground railroads for folks in this country seeking reproductive care to come here. We'll do the work, and we'll prevail.
I also want to say on the local government level, it is different than when Trump first came in, but what your city government did was assess what money we were likely to lose from the federal government because of our stance on not turning people into the INS. What we have done is set up surveillance policies that protect your data from being shared with states like Florida and Texas, who will persecute women and people seeking gender-affirming surgery. We don't share our data with those agencies. It was considered a bit kind of neurotic of me to worry about this when I first came into office because we didn't understand this threat. But I think that us demanding that our data be protected and that we take a serious look at how we spend our money, make sure that we have the funds to back up any loss of federal funds. So we have to be responsible guardians of our resources and our data here so that we know what to do locally. And that did happen under Mayor Adegin the first time Donald Trump was elected. It is going to be worse this time, but I know that we can do this. So thank you for the question. Yes. Do you need a mic? Yeah, there we go.
Hi, I just want to thank you all for being here. I think this has been a really good learning experience. One of the questions that I had, I think, was just based off of a question that was asked before that I just would like to hear a little bit more about. But essentially, I'm just wondering if either any of you can talk about whether there's any current conversations or strategies, maybe on a party level or even in your office as a new congressional member, that are focused on bringing in young people and keeping them motivated. And I ask this because I think I can speak for myself when I say it's scary to be in a generation that feels like we've inherited some problems that are very timely to address and have very high stakes. And then I also hear that there's conversations happening where people are constantly feeling like they're being let down since they were children. And so I'm just wondering, I guess, to get your pulse on it, like, is the party paying attention and what that looks like? Are these discussions being had? And maybe if you can just talk about like what that has been like so far.
Yeah, it's a great question. I started as a full-time organizer at 17, and all that work at the Young Women's Freedom Center was about centering young people, young women. Is critical. Yeah, I'm gonna have mostly all young people in my office. I'm gonna have young people in my office. Like majority of the folks in my office are gonna be young because we have to build benches, not just folks who will staff, but folks who are gonna grow into amazing roles. As somebody, again, who got my start in youth organizing, the Young Women's Freedom Center and Urban Peace Movement, who are here, organizers in the district that I'm in current coalition with, I don't make promises that I can't keep. I've been very clear to them, we're gonna design a strategy to win for our folks. And I know that we will, because there are hundreds of thousands, in fact, in the Bay Area writ large, millions of young people who deserve leaders that are gonna really, really work with them and not speak for them always, right? Like that we can be a vessel as electeds, but you really need voices to be centered in decisions. So outside of amazing town halls and employment opportunities, I have a responsibility to create an institution inside of this large institution that creates a pathway for folks to lead in public policy and in government.
Right.
Right on. Thank you for the question.
I want to say that it's really important for young people to both push and challenge some of us who are older, but also recognize, I know when I was 20-something, I thought I knew everything. Turns out I didn't. But that is the arrogance of youth. But I promise, now that I'm 70, I say proudly, that I will not be a crotchety, cantankerous, grumpy person who tells younger people, well, you should do this, you should do this. I promise to be, try to give advice, but not do it in such a way that you aren't respecting the young people who have ideas of their own. There is wisdom, right? But there's innovation and creativity that some of us are in dire need of. So we need this multi-generational movement. So I make my promise to not be that grumpy old person.
Thank
Never
you.
that. I will say, my favorite quote in the world is, "Young people come first. They have the courage when we fail." Ella Baker.
Yeah, thank you.
You get that?
The last thing I want to add is putting young people in positions of actual power, not just saying that we're going to listen to them. So, for example, the Climate Commission in Berkeley, I made sure we had 2 youth members that came from our high school. We have to make sure that we have the youth vote turn out. Young people in Berkeley who are 16 and 17 can vote for the school board, and they don't know that. I was stunned at the polls, the appropriate 100 feet away, when people would come with their kids as they were walking them into their high school, for the kids to say, "Well, I can't vote." I'm like, yes, you can. You vote for the school board now. And we have not let young people know they have these powers. So I think that is a number one thing that is an obligation on our part. I just want to say also, in terms of the climate, there is no time to waste. And the disappointment that people feel, we have this idea about this arc of history, and yes, it goes up and down, but it generally heads in the right direction. That may be true for everything except the climate crisis. It cannot head in the right direction once it starts going in the absolute wrong direction. So right now, that is where young people, we need you. We need you today. We need to know your ideas for that. We need to not be the crotchety old people that say, well, it's inconvenient for me to have to drive around the block because you want a bike boulevard. We have to be the people that say, we want to allow you to talk to us about our food choices and how we serve animal products, for example, at our senior centers and youth centers. Maybe we won't go with the idea that you came with, that we should have all that be vegan meals, but I want to hear that from you. I want you to tell me where we're failing. And one incredibly powerful example for me was that the kids at our Berkeley Community College came to me and said, "Do you know that the compost bags in the back of your grocery store are not being composted? Yes, they're green, but they are not compost bags. So everything that we were faithfully putting in them for years and putting in the compost bin was being thrown in the trash." No, I did not know that. And so we changed that. But I only learned that because of young people. I didn't know that myself. So that is the promise, that we will listen. But particularly when it comes to climate, there's no time to waste. So thank you for that question. I think I have a hard time reading this watch and this light, so someone tell me.
Right to your right.
What? There is a person waving at me. I think we are done. Thank you for your time and your attention today. And I know you're going to have a few final words, but I want to thank the panelists very much for their time.
Hi, I'm Margie Ryan. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and Philanthropy here at iHouse. Some of our guests have places to go. I know some of you do as well. Some of us are probably getting hungry. I also wanted just to thank our panelists for coming here tonight, for spending this last couple hours with us. Lateefah Simon, Maria Echaveste, and a special thanks to iHouse alumna Kate Harrison for their time, for their insights, and for the strategies and encouragement to all of us to keep going. Thanks to all of you who have come here to sit with us here at iHouse, and thanks to all who have joined us online. It's really a pleasure to spend this time together. If you want to, I encourage you to please pay attention to your emails for other events like this here at iHouse, and also to our social media channels. There's always a lot going on, there's a lot to talk about, and there's always lots of different perspectives. So thank you again, good evening.